Hello, and welcome to the ShopLogic podcast, episode 4. I am your host, Adrienne. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Starbucks and their seasonal drinks. Is the company Starbucks ethical in general? The sustainability and health of certain spices. Winter outerwear, talking about down, fur, and materials to avoid for animals. Vegan brands for warm coats and winter jackets. Nail polish, is it vegan? Cruelty-free, toxic for health. So welcome to ShopLogic. If it's your first time listening to this podcast, you might be wondering, what is ShopLogic? It is a website, app, podcast, and soon-to-be ethical brand certifier. The ultimate goal here is learning together how to buy better, not having an ignorance is bliss kind of attitude, and maybe putting up blinders when buying products we know do more harm than good to ourselves, to animals, people, and the planet. It's about not being in the dark about what we support when we vote with our dollars, so to speak, and not feeling hopeless like the world's gone to hell. So who cares? Just buy anything. It doesn't matter anyway. Rather, knowing that small actions that we take can create big changes. We can only control what we contribute to and support when we shop, but at least you can sleep at night proudly knowing you have tried your best to not fund industries that are destructive. Buying with more in mind. Who am I? I'm Adrienne. I'm the creator of ShopLogic. I collect and organize data. All the data found on the website, the app, that you're listening to in the podcast, I've collected through lots of research online and manually at that. AI is just not quite accurate, not yet at least. So I've noticed certain contradictions with AI responses when you quickly Google whether a brand is vegan or cruelty-free. It doesn't necessarily give you a comprehensive overview of what you might be seeking. That's why I dig much deeper for information and answers for transparency when it comes to what I buy, so I can share it with you. And who are you as a listener? Maybe you're someone looking for guidance on what things to watch out for before you buy them, especially when it comes to health, the environment, animals, laborers. You want to seek honest, unbiased info about brands, ingredients, materials, products, etc. before supporting them and just buying blindly. You're someone who wishes to gain insight about their shopping decisions and not fall for cheap marketing tricks that try to make you believe something is healthy when it's really not, or eco-friendly when it's destructive, or ethically and socially acceptable despite maybe the exploitation of innocent animals. On last week's episode 3, we discussed soup season, ingredients to watch out for, canned foods, are they healthy or not, brand analysis on leading soup brands, Panera Bread and greenwashing techniques, UK animal testing, which was positive news, shoe production featuring the Uggs brand, and December being Human Rights Month. So without further ado, let's get right into the episode content. First, we're going to start with Starbucks. It is super cold outside. It is December. It is holiday season. And so Starbucks is thriving. They gain the most business this time of year with these specialty, novelty, seasonal only, limited time drinks that they offer, which made me think, are these drinks vegan? And in general, is Starbucks really an ethical company to even support? If I go to Starbucks, which isn't that often, I do just get a coffee or a tea. I might add oat milk or soy milk, but usually it's just a black coffee, nothing fancy. Generally speaking, at any time of the year, Starbucks drinks can be easily made vegan by swapping the dairy milk for a plant-based option, such as oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, and maybe even coconut milk if they have it, holding the whipped cream or dairy-based sauces. But some of these seasonal items contain all of those things, as well as maybe honey, in the gingerbread chai concentrate. These drinks aren't always vegan. It's really important to check your ingredients, and even though they're likely not listed, you'd have to dig pretty deep for that. You can always ask the barista for modifications. So here are some generally vegan options, but with modifications. They have their peppermint mocha, which you can order with almond, soy, oat milk, and skip the whipped cream and skip the chocolate curls. That's going to contain milk, likely. Apple crisp oat milk macchiato shaken espresso, not espresso, Okay, I hear that a lot. There's no X in espresso. It's espresso. These are often vegan with oat milk. Just skip the whipped cream if it's on there. There's something called cranberry drinks, refreshers, and lemonades. They're typically vegan if you just hold the whipped cream. And here's some drinks to completely avoid or to modify carefully because they're going to, like, maybe Starbucks can't even make it vegan. I've had that happen before. Their caramel brulee latte, the sauce is going to contain dairy. Gingerbread oat milk chai, the chai concentrate has honey. Frappuccinos, which I believe is year-round, always ask for no whipped cream, use a non-dairy milk. So check the syrup, beware of hidden dairy. It's mostly dairy and honey. Yes, honey does count. It comes from an animal. Most vegans prefer to skip the honey entirely. You are taking away honey from bees who work very, very hard just to produce that honey for their own sustenance. And a lot of times the beekeepers will just swap that out for sugar, and it's not healthy for bees, which are so extremely important to the environment and to the wildlife and to food production, since they are such critical pollinators. There are probably way more Starbucks seasonal drinks on the menu that I have not mentioned, but those are just some tips and some of the popular options. I don't even go above and beyond when it comes to ordering these seasonal drinks. I don't go to Starbucks too often. And when I do, it's just like black coffee, tea, nothing fancy. I mean, they just get so expensive. So I don't go all out per se and do this like apple crisp, cranberry, peppermint, creme brulee, caramel brulee, gingerbread, what have you. But maybe you do. I've noticed it's their busiest season. So now, Starbucks in general, is it just an ethical company overall to support? Well, number one, when it comes to coffee and tea, a lot of those things are definitely preferred if they are fair trade, due to the high exploitation of laborers and workers in certain parts of the world where they produce coffee beans and they produce tea leaves. So that is always something to watch out for. I think they do have a lot of ethical options. However, it is a complex, debated issue with Starbucks. They have had criticisms in the past regarding labor abuses, such as forced labor, even sexual assault on their suppliers' farms, even despite some ethically sourced claims. So that is not good. Not something you want to support. They also have some internal issues pertaining to unions and positive efforts in environmental sustainability. While Starbucks promotes its cafe practices, so that's CAFE practices for ethical sourcing and sustainability, there have been a lot of allegations and investigations. Key concerns are like labor issues, maybe some misleaded marketing, workers' rights internally. I mean, their workers always seem happy to me, but then I think, oh, that's just because they have an unlimited supply of caffeine. And no wonder they seem so cheerful, but no, maybe behind the scenes. So they face criticisms for how they handle the unionization efforts for employees and so forth. And then there are even some evaluations lacking organic or fair trade certification. So their cafe practices, CAFE, it's a program designed to ensure ethical sourcing, including environmental standards, fair wages, zero tolerance for child labor. However, its implementation is questioned. It's one of those things where you just don't really know. It's such a major corporation. Starbucks you can find in just about every country these days. It's almost become like a McDonald's. It's everywhere you go. And you have to wonder, when a company gets that big, how can it really keep up with all of its claims of being ethical and handling people and its employees and its laborers and producers fairly? I'm sure there's a lot that slips through the cracks, and not everything can be fully documented, reported, investigated, and so forth. I think it's always better supporting a local cafe if you're going out for caffeine, if you're getting a coffee or a tea or a quick snack, something like that. I really try to support the smaller local businesses, the cafes that are not chains. They can have a really nice ambiance and warm feel some nice music, a good place you can hang out, bring your laptop and do your work, go chat with friends and family, a nice communal area to get together in. And you don't necessarily have to go to Starbucks, especially when it's such a questionable company and corporation. Even retailers, sometimes it's always better. The smaller the business, helps local economy, and there is a lot more transparency, a lot more ability to keep track of what coffees they're sourcing and from which producers, and they can actually better monitor what is going on and choose more ethical types of coffees to source or teas and things like that. So overall, I'm just not so sure about Starbucks. It's okay every now and then maybe, but generally speaking, I wouldn't go there on a regular basis. In terms of cost, it can really add up. A lot of times I just end up buying a fair trade organic coffee from the store, and that's my morning coffee. That's my morning caffeine. Also, I never really eat the food there. I don't think I've ever eaten the food at Starbucks, but I do look in that glass case waiting in line, and they rarely have vegan, vegetarian options. There might be vegetarian. I have seen like cheese and fruit cracker tray type of assortment. I have seen like a salad mixture or something with egg in it, like a hard-boiled egg. Most of their pastries are just loaded with sugar. The health aspect just really isn't there from what I can see, just at a glance. And they do label their products, their food items, gluten-free or vegetarian or vegan. But again, not a lot of healthy, veggie-friendly, plant-based options. It seems like it's fresh, but I just question how long it's actually been sitting there on that shelf. It looks like it could last a week or something, like a sandwich. It's made there. It's just been sitting there. I don't know. I do question the freshness of their pastries and their baked goods. Not too sure, but they're definitely popular among Americans. Absolutely. Everyone's been to Starbucks. Everyone's tried it. I think it'd be hard to find a person who's never been to Starbucks and never tried Starbucks. In sum, there are so many options out there, and I know Starbucks seasonal drinks are such a novelty, and it only comes around once a season. Just same with the pumpkin spice latte and the fall autumn seasonal drinks, and now we've moved into the winter holiday drinks with the peppermint and the gingerbread and what have you. And I think it's also kind of crazy how children have gotten on board with Starbucks. That blows my mind. When I was a kid, you never asked for if you asked for anything, it would be like when you're out with your parents, it would be like ice cream or an icy or something like that. It was never some caffeinated drink from a major coffee chain. I think they've like breached the market to even spill over into like teenagers and children. Even if it doesn't have caffeine in it, man, does it have sugar. So you can get your sugary spiced whatever drink with all the whipped cream on it, all the syrup pumped into it, all the caramel and the chocolate chips thrown in it. It is almost just like eating an ice cream at that point. So I see kids all the time, like it's like a whole family outing when they come to Starbucks, and I'm thinking, all that whipped cream, all that sugar, all that razzle and dazzle thrown into the drink to make it colorful and exotic looking and just like packed with all the works. And I'm just, from a standpoint of health, I question, how's that going to be for diabetes? I mean, it's so much sugar once in a blue moon. Everything in moderation, but I have a feeling a lot of people get hooked. There are many ingredients in these Starbucks drinks to watch out for. And with that, I'm going to segue into some common holiday baking spices. I'm sure a lot of baking is happening in the kitchens pertaining to cookies and pies and cakes and whatever. So like the most common holiday baking spices for this winter season, whatever your holiday of choice may be, even a non-secular just celebration of being indoors in the winter and having that nostalgic comfort food, you might be baking a lot of stuff. The most common holiday baking spices are cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. These particular ingredients provide warmth and spice, often blended together. It could be cardamom and star anise, for instance, when it comes to baking gingerbread or pumpkin pie or spiced cakes. And so what is the issue with spices? Why would spices ever be, spices are traditionally known to be good for you. However, a lot of spices contain anti-caking agents and heavy metals. Most anti-caking agents are considered safe if used in certain amounts, but other studies have actually raised concerns about specific potential health effects, primarily with high consumption or in sensitive individuals. So the spices themselves are generally healthy, but often contain hidden additives that don't have to be listed on the label. And that's what's a bit disturbing. I believe if it's under 2%, it doesn't have to be listed on the label. So they could sprinkle whatever they like in there and not even list it. So some anti-caking agents are going to be silicon dioxide, calcium silicate, and tricalcium phosphate. So they're added to these powdered products like spices and even salt to absorb moisture and prevent clumping. So it doesn't do anything for the flavor or the overall taste or anything like that. It's really just in there as a texture thing so that it doesn't clump up, get lumpy, and if there's water in there, it doesn't affect the spice. It creates for a longer shelf life. So the Food and Drug Administration and even the European Food and Safety Authority, EFSA, classify most anti-caking agents as generally recognized as safe, GRAS, at typical consumption levels, which is not too reassuring because if it's bad for you, you would hope that they would just nix it altogether. So potential concerns for anti-caking agents would be digestive and immune health, contaminants, inhalation risk, and the nutritional impact. There are potential negative impacts on the intestinal immune system and an increased risk of celiac disease, concerns that these agents contain impurities like heavy metals. And if you inhale large quantities, I don't know why you would do that, but maybe this is for the concern of factory workers, but it's still a concern because why would you want that at all? Why would you want to be around that? Why would you want to put that in your body? Reports have found some conventional spice brands may contain heavy metals like arsenic, that's fun, cadmium, don't know how to say that one, and lead, which we know is a huge no-no that should not be ingested. Spices contain fillers and artificial ingredients, sodium and sugar. You could try to read the label, look to see if there are any preservatives, and then you'll almost always see sugar and salt on some spice labels if it's like a mixed spice, because usually salt and sugar will exceed the 2% of the contents. So you can choose pure or organic spices. You could even grind your own spices at home. And natural alternatives. Some companies use natural anti-caking agents such as ground rice hulls. I don't know if you ever remember seeing in like a restaurant, maybe in Florida or somewhere where it gets real humid, where the salt shaker has rice in it. That is why that's a natural anti-caking solution. So not to be a bummer when it comes to all of these fun holiday desserts that you're about to consume, but just FYI, spices are not as innocent as one may think. I always thought adding spices to everything I cooked or baked or whatever was always a good thing because spices are typically super, super healthy for you, but not when they contain anti-caking agents that are toxic and not when they contain heavy metals. The sustainability of spices. When it comes to the environment, it's also a complex issue. A lot of times, just to create the spice itself, it is going to create a very high water footprint and carbon footprint. As you can see, if you go to the ShopLogic website or app, I always recommend the app because it's just so much quicker to get like a summary. You can go to the website if you want to dive deeper into an ingredient or a material or a brand. You could get like a long story about that whole thing. But the name of the game for me was to create what I call snapshots. So for ingredients like cinnamon and allspice, star anise, ginger, etc., you can go onto the app, go to foods or ingredients, and just do your search, and you can see whether it is a green, yellow, or red in terms of health, environment, animals, laborers. When it comes to the carbon and water footprints of spices, they do tend to be quite high. A lot of spices are grown in more tropical areas of the world. They require that water. The thing is, though, when you consume spices, you don't consume them the way you would a food like fruits, vegetables, grains, proteins, legumes. You might just do a few sprinkles, a few shakes of spice into your recipe, into the dish or dessert that you're making. And therefore, if you're using it at such low frequency, then it's not that bad. If you're using it just every now and then in very, very small portions, then yes, it may have a high carbon or water footprint, but ultimately it's not like you are consuming a pound of cinnamon every day or what have you. But in general, it's still good to know that this is something you want to do in moderation. So who really would have known that about spices? I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not certainly not as bad as an animal product or byproduct, but the consumption of spices, it's still good to know, especially when it comes to health. All of the heavy metals, anti-caking agents, different little sneaky ingredients they can hide in there that might cause a lot of disruptive side effects to your body. There's really no good segue into our next topic, so I'm just going to say it. Winter outerwear. We are in the season. Again, this whole episode has a theme. I've been trying to do that, trying to be relevant to the time of year that we're in right now, which is December. It's very, very cold outside. This morning I woke up and on my phone it said 2 degrees Fahrenheit. That's negative 16 Celsius. That's pretty daggone cold. When it comes to winter outerwear, you want something very effective. You need to stay warm, depending on where you live in the world. But for a lot of people who experience 4 seasons, you know how cold it can get, how miserable that is. But you still need to go out. You still need to go to work, run errands, go visit people. You got places to be, people to see. You cannot be cooped up inside all the time. So therefore, we have to layer it up, go outside, and just face the frigid temperatures. So a lot of coats, they're going to contain down, which are feathers from ducks, or they're going to contain leather, wool, which is an insulant, so that also keeps you super warm. What's wrong with down and wool and leather? Well, they all come from animals. With leather, obviously, the cow has had to die in order to get the leather hide. But with wool and down, you're thinking, okay, well, that didn't require an animal to die. A sheep can still live when it's sheared of its wool, and a duck can still live if its feathers have been plucked. So in order to produce just like one jacket, one coat, one winter coat, how many ducks did they have to pluck to get all of those feathers out? And they do this while they're alive, and it's very painful. When it comes to down production, it's very, very gruesome, and I won't get into too many details, but you can understand how that is just simply unethical. It's inhumane. It inflicts pain and suffering on a creature, and that's something we don't want to contribute to when we're being mindful of our choices. The good news is there are so many material alternatives nowadays. We don't have to rely on down. Although I do understand it's a very effective material and method for staying warm, there are ways that you can use synthetic or plant-based materials, and they've come so far now with innovation. They're always creating very new technical materials that are way more sustainable. Because remember, anytime you consume an animal product or byproduct, it's not just the animal that's jeopardized and their quality of life and suffering and pain and exploitation. It is also insanely unsustainable for the planet. Animals are bred to the point where it is so unnatural. They're artificially inseminated. So none of this process is natural. The world is so populated. Corporations have to produce on such a major scale. And if you are telling these companies, oh yes, I support down, I want a down coat, make more, they're going to do that. And so the way for them to do that is to have to source more and more wool, more and more down, more and more leather. And the only way they can do that is they need to breed animals quickly and at such a scale where it's just unsustainable and unnatural for the planet. Why is it unsustainable? These animals require land. They require food and water, and then they emit gas and waste. So no part of that is necessary when you have, okay, for plant-based things, you need a little bit of land for crops to produce the plants that would become the material. But by comparison, that's nowhere near as much as, let's say, a sheep or duck or a cow. They consume grain and corn and wheat, and think about how so much of that food and so much water of our fresh water supply, which is finite, by the way, they need to consume all just to produce, let's just say one coat. Vegan alternatives would be fills like polyester, Primaloft, Thinsulate, or plant-based insulations. You could have recycled synthetics, organic cotton, hemp, or innovative plant-based fibers, faux fur, and synthetic buttons. Faux fur is not necessarily good either. It is synthetic. It does take chemicals to produce. And you'll see nowadays on jackets and coats that they will be labeled vegan, which is great. Or you can quickly look at the label and see if it's man-made materials. What is wrong with fur? My mind conjures an image of like back in the day when the animal rights activists would go up to some celebrity on the red carpet who was wearing like a mink or a fox fur coat, and they'd throw red paint on it as if to represent the blood. A little theatrical. Foxes, beavers, and minks are the primary animals used. Fur is durable, it's long-lasting, it's definitely warm, but the fur trade and the fur production usually keeps foxes and minks in cages like their whole lives, and they only are bred just to be killed once they're full grown, just for their coat, just for their fur. And because there's so many people in the world now, they have to do really unethical things like keep animals in cages and breed them as quickly as they can and create as much turnover as they can. And it's not as old world as people think. It's not humane, it's not natural. And thankfully, I believe the world has come a long way since real fur. I mean, it's so rare. I just think of like old people wearing actual fur, or maybe it's like you find it at a thrift store in a vintage shop, like a real fur coat, but it's just kind of tacky looking. Even the style has gone a bit out of fashion, thankfully. It also reminds me of Cruella de Vil. I mean, lest we forget 101 Dalmatians, the whole premise of that Disney film was that there were all of these Dalmatian puppies that the villain wanted to slaughter to make a coat. If everyone can collectively agree that Cruella de Vil is the evil person, the evil, she has bad intentions and really unethical and immoral goals to create her Dalmatian coat, if we can get on board with that as a society, then how can we continue to support an actual fur? There are tons of vegan brands for warm coats and jackets. Just to name a few, you can look for Save the Duck, Noise, Noize, Hoodlamb, and Vaute, Vaute, for stylish animal-free insulation. You could also find, Matt and Nat is another one that I like. They also make really cute bags. Fully vegan brand, by the way. I have all of these listed on the ShopLogic app. If you go there and you go into fashion brands and you just search for coats or outerwear, then you'll see which of the most popular brands for coats, jackets, outerwear, sportswear, outdoors, etc., which ones are vegan, which ones might have some vegan options, but they still produce other items with down and fur or leather, wool. For instance, major players like Patagonia and the North Face, they do have some vegan-friendly options, and they use very innovative materials. Like I mentioned before, one is called Plumafil or Thermoball Eco. Those are down alternatives, which is really great. Those are just a new type of material that's been constructed specifically in the name of replacing down for a more ethical, animal-free, and sustainable alternative. So this is why it matters when we shop for things. The companies actually pay attention to market trends, and this is why what you buy makes a difference. Is when you say, okay, I'm not buying down, and they notice, oh, this isn't selling as well as we'd like. What's the problem? And then they do like a survey and they do research, and then they see, oh, we got to create something different because the general public is not cool with down. It results in the creation of these way more ethical materials being created. Some of the top brands for warm coats that you might see at the store would be like Columbia, Patagonia, REI, North Face. These are like household names. I noticed something when I was filling out my data sheets that correlate to the app. Patagonia says on their Facebook page, quote, "We're in business to save our home planet." Okay, people, this is an example of, I don't know if we can call this greenwashing or just absolute deception, but we're in the business to save our home planet. What does that mean? Patagonia as a brand, they're not vegan. They might have a few vegan options, but they primarily use wool, down, cashmere, and leather. So they do avoid fur and Angora. And they do some things like using recycled polyester and hemp for a lot of their products. But you cannot be in the business of saving our home planet when you are killing it, when you are killing the animals that live on this planet, and when you are supporting an animal industry to create the materials and fabrics necessary to produce your inventory when it's causing absolute destruction to the earth. Everyone knows, I always say everyone knows, but I forget not everyone knows that sheep and cows and all these ruminant animals, goats, pigs, sheep, cows, chickens, I mean, all of them, ducks and geese, since we're talking about down, all of them are high intensity consumers themselves of water and food and land, and they create waste. That is not sustainable. You cannot have a brand that uses animal derived products, whether it's food or fur or leather or feathers or any part of that animal, and call it sustainable and act like you're being a help to the planet when it's not. Because it's not just about the animal dying. It is also about the ecosystem, about carbon emissions, water consumption, land usage, deforestation, waste, and manure. So not a fan of Patagonia, not a fan at all. Also, something I found funny, when you go to the ShopLogic app, you can look up materials and you can see all the types of materials I'm talking about. And whether or not they're vegan, whether or not they're sustainable, because again, and like always, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's good. So you can have a material that's vegan, but it's not sustainable. It's maybe very artificial and requires a lot of chemicals and uses toxins and doesn't biodegrade well. So you can browse through the materials, and it's why it's always good to know what things mean exactly, because they could have very deceptive names. There's such a fabric/material called cotton duck, okay? And cotton duck, it's like, which is it? Is it cotton? Is it duck? But cotton duck, despite having duck in the name, is actually vegan. I just wanted to point out that a name can be very misleading. Moving right along, it is the season of getting dressed up, holiday events, parties, get-togethers, visiting friends and family, you're back in town. What do you do, ladies? You get your nails done. And the question is nail polish vegan? No, it's actually not. Not a lot of nail polishes are vegan. Very hard to believe. You're like, oh my God, what could they be putting in nail polish? Why is like nothing vegan? So not all nail polish is vegan. A lot of traditional formulas contain animal-derived ingredients like, and I'm going to mess this word up, guanine, which is fish scales, and carmine, which is crushed insects. We know that from food dye. Or keratin, which is an animal protein. You might also find that in your shampoo for shimmer, color strengthening, what have you. Ooh, just another one. Shellac. Shellac is that's a very traditional nail polish. That is actually resin from beetles. And animal-derived fragrances and oils could be musk or shark liver oil. So very hard to believe, but true. But the majority of nail polish is more likely going to be made from insects, which is weird. It's for shimmer. Fish scales for shimmer, red pigment from crushed beetles, keratin protein from hooves and horns to strengthen your nails. Wow, who would have thought? But there are a lot of vegan options available, thankfully. Another thing to look out for is it cruelty-free? Because nail polish can be cruelty-free, but sometimes they still do test it on animals. And is nail polish toxic? This is probably the biggest concern. Yes, traditional nail polish contains lots of toxic chemicals. I think they call them the toxic trio, would be formaldehyde, toluene, also probably not saying that right, and DBP,
which are linked to respiratory issues, allergies, organ damage, reproductive developmental harm, especially with frequent exposure if you go to the salon often. Small ingestions, usually harmless, but long-term, high-level exposure raises significant health concerns. So you have something called 3 free, 5 free, 9 free, 15 free, 21 free. You might see that on nail polish brands these days, and it basically refers to how many terrible ingredients they've left out. I guess it's good at least to have, the 3 terrible ones completely out, but if you see something like a nail polish brand that's like 21 free, if you see that, then that's probably the best you can go with in terms of safety for your own health. I mean, I always remember, like, at the mall as a teenager walking by the nail salon, you didn't even have to go into the salon. You could just walk past the salon in the mall, and like I could barely breathe. I'd start coughing. I'd have to like cover my mouth. And then if I would go in there with a friend or something, like we're going to get our nails done, it was almost like my eyes started watering. Like I was like, I don't understand how people can breathe in here. It was that laden with chemicals in the air, adrift in the air. It just like toxins, like swirling around, chemicals. I feel like they finally have figured out like, ventilation's pretty important. Like, and then they've also created more of an inventory of nail colors, nail options, nail polish brands that are becoming aware, okay, these chemicals are super, super toxic. Let's reduce them. Let's replace the ingredients with something else. And as long as there's a replacement, it's like, why continue to have it? Why continue to use these really dangerous ingredients? And it usually always comes down to money. It usually just comes down to how to turn over the most profit for a lot of these businesses. So thankfully, there are a lot of brands that you can find on the ShopLogic app and get to know, number 1, is it vegan? Number 2, is it cruelty free? And number 3, what kind of toxins are we talking here? Like, how bad is it? The other thing I wanted to mention before we finish is, how can a product be cruelty free when it is not vegan? When I do my database collection and I'm filling out my Google Sheets and whatever, I also like to see if a brand is certified, if they've been certified by PETA or Leaping Bunny. A lot of times, PETA, which is notorious for being like very intense, let's say, almost to the point of like, I think it's too much, they go ahead and they certify brands as cruelty free, which means not tested on animals, but the product might contain animal byproduct. All the time I see Leaping Bunny certification or a PETA certification and it says cruelty free, certified cruelty free. And before I would just grab that, not think twice, like, okay, this is what I want. Get home, look closer at the ingredients and realize, oh, this contains keratin. That is an animal byproduct or carmine made from crushed beetles or animal-derived ingredients. And so with cosmetics and toiletries and products like that, you are going to see, yeah, it's cruelty-free, meaning not tested on animals, but it should not be called cruelty-free when you've used an animal ingredient in it because that animal literally died to be part of this product as an ingredient, but you're still going to call that cruelty-free. The hypocrisy is rife. Even when it comes to PETA, they continue on and on to approve all these brands and all these products as cruelty-free. I'm just telling you to take a closer look because just if it says cruelty-free, that does not mean it's vegan. You have to see both terms listed. You cannot just assume because it says cruelty-free, oh good, that means it wasn't tested on animals. Surely there's no animal ingredients in here. It's not the case. Also, is nail polish remover toxic? Yes, it absolutely is. Big time. So that's another consideration. Cotton pads. The cotton pads used to remove nail polish, you are going to want to buy organic and unbleached because typically cotton is grown with harsh pesticides, can be grown with pesticides, chemicals, whatever. But if you get organic, unbleached cotton pads to use, they are gentler for sensitive skin, reduces irritation. Maybe that was of interest to you. I just felt like during the holiday season, everyone's getting glammed up for the events and festivities. So that's probably something that you might be doing, and it's something to consider. It's not about perfection. It's extremely hard to, first of all, there is no such thing as perfection, doesn't exist. But the name of the game is progress. So the more you know, the more you can reduce your harmful impact and choose better options. If you go get your nails done at the salon, you can request vegan, cruelty-free options. They should know which is which. Or you could even just pull up the ShopLogic app and look for very common brands that are found in salons as well, and be able to see what their ethical status is. So on a final note, I would like to end today's episode with a quote. And the quote is from a man called Gary Yourofsky, who is an American activist and lecturer. And he said, "The problem is that humans have victimized animals to such a degree that they are not even considered victims. They are not even considered at all. They are nothing. They don't count. They don't matter. They are commodities like TV sets and cell phones. We have actually turned animals into inanimate objects, sandwiches and shoes, nail polish and winter coats and Starbucks drinks." He didn't say those last three examples, I did. Let that be something to sink in. If you haven't already, check out the ShopLogic website, the ShopLogic app, follow on socials like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, subscribe to the Spotify podcast for weekly episodes to learn how we can buy better. As always, thank you so much for listening. Bye.